And students at Jesuit High are petitioning for canceled exams next week, since many families went days without power.
We heard about it because we have faculty members who have students at the school, and so we kind of knew that there was a petition. To give a little context, at that point, we were still thinking we might have finals during the actual week that we were scheduled, that maybe that we might miss one day or two. By the time we got the petition, we had already made the decision to go to digital learning days on Thursday, Friday, and then have finals be what would have been the first week of the second semester, so kind of pushing them. So it was interesting when we got the petition, it was based on kind of the old information. No one had updated it, so we were kind of like, what are they asking? I think in this case, one of the things, if we're talking about the storm, it was so individual. Like the context for each family was very different, and I think we had a lot of context. A lot of the students who were signing that petition didn't have the context. We weren't going to make decisions for 1,280 kids based on information from a petition that they didn't necessarily have all the information. So I think my answer, and not to kind of straddle the fence, it depends, right? Like in this situation, we had more information than the students. Well, first, reading them and kind of seeing what the question was. Sometimes we just got form emails, like there was someone cut and pasted an email that was exactly the same as someone else's. You know, we responded, but they also got a cut and paste response. But if there was something specific in there, like a concern, like one of the concerns that came up, like I'm in an AP class, this is going to potentially put us behind because we're not going to have as much time in the semester, we tried to address that, saying we've lost time in semesters, our teachers are professionals, they know how to adjust curriculum, and a lot of those came from seniors who are in AP classes that typically are only taught in one semester, but we teach them over a whole year. So there was plenty of time. So we tried to kind of address any anxiety that a student might have about taking their final. Well, it's a department level, kind of each department and grade level decides on the weight of the exam, so it's not like the vice principals or Mr. Maxey says everybody has to do this. So we didn't, and the reason why is I don't think students understand that there were kids who wanted to make sure they took their final because they had a B+, and if we changed the percentage, they might not have the chance for the A-. We didn't want to change anything kind of midstream. That didn't seem fair. I mean, to be honest, like, we don't dig into the comments. One of the interesting thing about that whole week is when we heard from families that were really impacted, they were not asking us to change our finals policy. They were asking us, can we work with their child? Like, what can they do? We were reaching out in levels of support. Most of the students we heard from were not impacted. Majority of the emails were about there's ice on the road or there was a tree down, so I can't study for finals. We're administrators, you guys are high school students. Who wouldn't want to not take finals, right? But we also, our job is to kind of think long-term and what's ultimately best for students. And we worked with a lot of families to reschedule finals. But none of those families that I worked with asked, can my child not take the final? I think one of the things, we went through a pandemic a few years ago, you might remember that, and we learned a lot about, we want to make decisions based on data, like on information, not on feelings or what people say is happening. So part of what we did is you saw we put out surveys, like how many of you have been impacted? Are you without power still? Do you want to reschedule your final? And I think that a lot of that process we learned in the pandemic, like working with students of, would you come back to school if we offered school? Would you want to be here on a half day or a full day? And so that gathering information and then making data-informed decisions was something that we learned in the pandemic, and we learned that in the pandemic, kids are resilient and they're adaptable. And when we take hard things off students' plates or young people's plates, it's not necessarily the best thing for them, because hard things help us learn and help us grow.